I already stated in our first response video that I don't know or care about Mr. Potter's personal life. I don't care about his professional life. S.H.A.R.K and I do care about people who rip off well-meaning donors and deprive the animals of money raised supposedly for their benefit. We have exposed Will Potter for his Kickstarter campaign because he took in more than $75,000 on a promise to document abuses at factory farms.
For me, this video is not about any specific political issue. For me, this video is about a broad question of ethics, honor, dignity, or the meaning of life and leading a good life. In the next 5 minutes, you're going to see the particular example or the particular case study that I'm really using as the window frame or the window dressing to take a glimpse into this issue. But I'm not particularly interested in delving into the details of this one case study. I want to talk about those underlying themes. Today, I really did get upset talking to Klaus from Plant-Based News. And the very last message I sent to Klaus, written series of messages going back and forth, said to him, Klaus, what happened to me can happen to you. You also could get accused of being a scam artist. You also could get falsely framed of being a fraud. You could face accusations and allegations that discredit you in your personal life, your professional life, that suddenly make it impossible for you to do fundraising for the things that matter to you most. In his case, he has a YouTube channel called Plant-Based News. He has a website. Plant-Based News, you could be cut off from all of that. And worse, someone could make allegations talking about your sex life. Someone could make allegations claiming that you're a sexual predator. And it wouldn't be hard to do. It wouldn't be hard to do either in terms of something that's a complete lie or even just putting together selected fragments of fact out of context and presenting them in the most unflattering way. What happened to me, Klaus, can happen to you. Now, I'm saying this to Klaus because the reality is Klaus is one of the people who did this to me. Klaus ran a news service, as mentioned, and it really does hurt me and impact me much more that I had to face this kind of defamation, misrepresentation, unfair treatment from someone like Klaus. It hurts me more coming from him and coming from his seemingly respectable news agency when they allegedly do research and fact-checking. And they claim, in his words, he claimed that there was a lot of evidence that I was running a scam when nothing in my life was a scam. Everything was an open book. It was completely obvious what was going on. He could have very easily... He didn't check any facts. He was recycling internet rumors as fact without even putting any thought into it. It's very damning and damaging to have a source like him making that kind of judgment and presenting it in the way that he did. And it hurts me personally much, much more than, a teenager with a YouTube account who just takes a kind of fleeting interest in this and jumps on a bandwagon of rumor and innuendo. Of course, both are bad, but there's a difference. And of course, one of the differences between a real newspaper or a real magazine and just a teenager, mouthing off on the internet, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or what have you, it's supposed to be that newspapers do research, they do fact-checking, they have editorial standards, and ultimately they have accountability. That when they're wrong, they issue a retraction, they issue an apology, maybe they delete the original video or original news article, whatever it is, and they put up some kind of correction or some kind of further article that explains what the situation actually was, as opposed to how they misrepresented before. And most of you watching this channel already know nothing like that ever happened with Klaus. And from my perspective, it was just this morning, in this time zone, it was just this morning that I was talking with Klaus. And I said to him, look, Klaus, all of this can happen to you. And even I, if I wanted to, I could do this to you. I know enough about Klaus and his personal life. I could put together this kind of defamation against him. You know, I'm not going to do that because I have personal integrity. And I go through this life again and again being disappointed that the people around me, including authority figures like university professors and what have you, that the people around me seem to have absolutely zero personal integrity. And of course I was having this conversation this morning with Klaus because I was so disappointed in him for having zero personal integrity. I'm disappointed with the vast majority of people I met through the vegan movement, the animal rights movement, and even more broadly, ecological political movements. I'm very disappointed that the vast majority of people this has brought into my life had zero personal integrity. And I've seen that again and again. And I'll be blunt with you. I want out. I mean, the cumulative effect of this, it's extremely demoralizing. I didn't get involved with this movement to be a one-man movement. I didn't want to try to save the world alone. From day one on this channel, I was always talking about the necessity of getting organized into little groups of at least 5 people so you can take on City Hall, do the paperwork, form a foundation, start lobbying governments, start getting involved with going to the school boards and complaining about, dairy industry propaganda being given to children being taught that milk is healthy, or whatever the issue is. It doesn't even have to be veganism. Whatever the issue is, nobody can take on this kind of lobbying, this kind of pressing for social and political change. Nobody can do it alone, or at least nobody wants to. Even if it's just 5 people, you need to get organized. And yeah, it's really incredibly demoralizing for me that after so many years and reaching out to so many people positively, that I don't have that group of 5 people I can rely on. And instead what I've encountered are thousands of people like Klaus. Thousands. So I ended this message to Klaus by saying, this can happen to you. You can be put in the position of having to clear your name against allegations of fraud and scam and scandal and sexual impropriety that are totally unreasonable and totally unfounded. Or in your case, maybe they're going to be a mix of little bits and pieces of fact taken out of context and presented in unflattering and unsympathetic, whatever it is. There may be a mix of fact and fiction, or it may be complete fiction. In my case, I think everything was just complete fiction I was dealing with, but whatever. The public seems to take very little interest in distinguishing those things, and that's why journalism really matters. That's why people in positions with a little bit of authority, like Klaus, why it really matters that they use that correctly. I ended it by saying to him, Klaus, all of this can happen to you, but one thing will remain different. You will not be in the position that I was in, of having to face the possibility that you lose the legal right to see your own daughter. You will not be in the position of contesting a divorce and a custody hearing in terms of your relationship with your own infant daughter, now 5 years old. That adds a dimension of sorrow and seriousness to this that you can't imagine, Klaus. That's one of the things that really raises the stakes here. So with all that having been said, I now go on to this controversy involving Steve Hindy for about 5 minutes of film here. And Steve Hindy is very quick to throw words like scam and scam artist around and fraud and what have you. And you'll see I'll add a few more words at the end of this video. I am not so quick. I'm not so relaxed about making those kinds of allegations. And that, for me, ultimately is a question of dignity, honor, personal integrity. Previously on S.H.A.R.K.
Today there are groups and individuals who haul in donations based on what they're going to do, but then there's no follow-through. Will Potter claims to be an award-winning investigative journalist. In June 2014, Will Potter announced he was going to raise money for a drone project through a campaign on Kickstarter.com. Will Potter stated he would use the drones to watch over factory farms. Potter called the campaign Drone on the Farm. On March 2, Kiyomi Shimizu pointed, "It's very frustrating when project starters disappear. This is actually one of the projects that have completely put me off using Kickstarter altogether." On March 5, 2015, Potter posted about an upcoming Kickstarter party that would include vegan pizza, snacks, and beers. On March 10, Will Potter posted that the Kickstarter party had been a success, and he included pictures. That was the final Kickstarter update. As time went on, the complaints continued. The updates did not.
And now, on this week's episode.
Hi, my name is Will Potter. I'm an investigative journalist and a faculty member at the University of Michigan. What I'm about to say has been a very long time coming. So, for instance, I was the first investigative journalist to be selected as a TED Fellow. And while I was at TED, I met the founder of Kickstarter, who is also a TED Fellow. And I told him I was thinking of starting a project with drones to investigate factory farms. And he said it sounded like an awesome idea. So a few months later, I submitted the project, and it took off like wildfire. It was funded in hours, massive media coverage. Places like the Washington Post wanted to follow along throughout this whole experience, this whole project and research. And not long after that, though, I truly hit rock bottom. The insomnia and chronic depression, PTSD, the suicidal ideations, they're kind of all tangled together like this big ball, like of old Christmas lights, is how it always felt. And anyway, like the breaking point for me was when I was having a conversation with a mentor of mine through TED. And that's when I finally grasped like how bad all of this had become. And he asked me to do this role-playing exercise with them to think through some of this stuff. And he said, okay, he would be Will Potter. And he said all the comments that I've said about my health or about why I didn't have time to address it or whatever. And then it just broke me. And one of the questions this fake Will Potter asked me was, what's going to happen if I don't change course? And my immediate response was, you're not going to be here in a year. And the speed at which that came out of my mouth was just this punch in the stomach. And I mean, that's when it clicked that I knew it was true. I knew it in my bones. I desperately needed a change. And thankfully, I found one. I had applied for the prestigious Knight Wallace Fellowship in Journalism at the University of Michigan. It brings top journalists from the New York Times and BBC and outlets around the world for this year of kind of study and retreat in a way. And just when I was starting to feel like I had my feet planted under me again is when the harassment started. Steve Hindy is kind of like the Alex Jones of the animal rights movement. Everything is one big conspiracy, and only he sees the world correctly. Only he is out there crusading for justice. Anyone who doesn't agree with him is the enemy.
To this day, the only actual evidence showing that Potter even put any effort into the project for which he took tens of thousands of dollars appeared on the 2016 docuseries Truth and Power. The small amount of footage aired revealed nothing more than him flying a toy around. S.H.A.R.K made a few offers in 2014 to help Will Potter get his project off the ground. S.H.A.R.K has been flying drones since 2010, and we know how valuable they can be to help animals. but Mr. Potter never even responded to our offers. Anyone serious about developing a drone operation will take an offer of assistance, because there are significant challenges to such an operation. Mr. Potter's silence in response to our efforts left us with little faith in his dedication, and now we know his promise wasn't authentic to begin with. Mr. Potter's current bio on TED's website makes no mention of his drone project, nor does Mr. Potter mention in his bio on his own website. Will Potter has obviously abandoned his drone project, and he hasn't returned the money from his donors, nor has he given them an explanation of where the money went. Why would Ted stand behind someone who has behaved in such a blatantly unscrupulous and unethical manner? Check out his Facebook post from March 1st depicting him wallowing in a hospital bed while showcasing his many expensive tattoos. Quote, "How I spent my spring break. My latest surgery went well, but recovery will be long. There's never a good time to be derailed like this, but it feels like getting kicked when I'm already down." End quote. And, quote, "Trolling by far-right neo-Nazis and other groups has escalated dramatically. Through it all, I have been working harder and at a higher level than I ever have." End quote. I'm sorry, but I can't tell what work Mr. Potter is supposedly doing. Well, whatever it is, it certainly doesn't include making proper use of the $75,000 plus that he took from good-hearted people so he could fly drones over factory farms.
I already stated in our first response video that I don't know or care about Mr. Potter's personal life. I don't care about his professional life. S.H.A.R.K and I do care about people who rip off well-meaning donors and deprive the animals of money raised supposedly for their benefit. We have exposed Will Potter for his Kickstarter campaign because he took in more than $75,000 on a promise to document abuses at factory farms. And more than 4 years later, he has, at best, a handful of wide-angle still photos to show for it. You could practically get that for free on Google Maps. In our first response video, I posted my email address so anyone could hold me accountable, whether they're from TED Talks, which put up a statement of support for Mr. Potter's false claims, or anyone else.
Now we have an interesting phrase in the English language. That's show business. A 5-year delay in filmmaking because the director or producer for the project has a mental breakdown, is hospitalized for a series of mysterious emotional or physical maladies. Does that mean the project is a scam? Does that mean it's a fraud? A lot of people would say no. I think a lot of people with experience in filmmaking would be able to give you a long list of examples of successful projects that had 5 years delays in production, research, preparation, whatever the case may be, sometimes for reasons that are very clear-cut and easy to communicate to the investors, and sometimes for reasons that remain shadowy and obscure. That's show business. I would not, in this context, call Will Potter a scam artist or a fraud. And I have been recently, and for a period of about 2 years, in the position of having to clear my name, defend myself against unreasonable charges that I was allegedly involved in some kind of scam or fraud when I was in an incredibly simple and transparent situation where I collected donations. All the donations came in about 1 day, about 24 hours. The donations were given to the law firm. The law firm pressed charges, case proceeded, and there was paperwork for everything. I mean, when you put your money into the legal system, what you get back is paperwork. So it was the most straightforward thing imaginable to debunk those complaints. And on a one-by-one, case-to-case basis, I reached out to people, whether they were journalists or other YouTubers or just kind of fear-mongers on the internet, said, oh, well, have you seen the paperwork? Have you thought about it? Are you willing to talk to me? And tried to set those misconceptions to rest. It's very difficult to say that I won. What ended up happening was just that I was convinced of the idiocy and total lack of personal integrity of my whole generation of aspiring activists. So, in a lot of ways, it feels like a defeat, even if you've won. Because of what you're seeing across the board. I mean, I was talking to another vegan recently, longtime vegan activist, and he kept saying to me that we're all on the same team. Like, oh, well, even though there may be differences of opinion between vegans. And I had to say back to him when I said, well, look, if you have two teammates, people playing soccer on the same team or something, and one of them accuses the other of being a pedophile, one of them threatens to stab the other, one of them claims that he has evidence sufficient to convict the other, and states that he's trying to round up a gang of strong people to beat up this other person and carry them to the police station and press charges and present this evidence. Wow, you really think we're all still on the same team? At what point do we admit there's more than one team here, or there's a breakdown in this presumed, unity you're imagining? And that's a kind of extreme and ridiculous example, although a real one. It's not hypothetical. It's a real situation we all can learn from. But in many cases, the ideological and abstract divisions between people run deeper, are more invidious, are more difficult to overcome. So we're not all on the same team, and allegations of fraud, allegations of being a scam artist, they do run very deep. I do not find what Will Potter has said in his defense convincing. I don't find him well-spoken. I don't find him articulate. The sad thing is, in this world, there are a lot of inarticulate people who are innocent of what they're being accused of. He obviously has a somewhat nervous and fidgety and evasive manner in the video he made speaking on this issue. And he's obviously resorted to trying to vilify Steve Hindy, trying to, lash back at his accusers rather than just clearing his own name, rather than just coming out and basically apologizing for a 5-year delay in the shooting schedule and saying, sorry, to be clear, that was shooting in reference to filmmaking. I should have said in reference to the filmmaking schedule. The word shooting has more than one meaning. That there's been a delay in the filming schedule. And he could have said in pretty much the same words as I said earlier in this video that he's sorry, but that's show business. I don't think Will Potter understands that the public supporting his project, whether they be donors or investors or colleagues in the filmmaking world, they really don't care about his relationship with his wife, his relationship with his children, his psychological problems, his therapist, his surgeon. Your personal life ultimately can't be used to leverage your political life in that way. It can't. This isn't primary school. You can't bring in a note and get an extension from the teacher. But what you can do is just man up, apologize, and try to reassure your audience that even though there have been 5 more years in the schedule than they might have been expecting, that this is going to be the best film project ever. I noticed that he wrote a very inarticulate update just a few days ago, I think. The date was just given by the month, so quite recently. He put an update on his Kickstarter talking about some of his academic publications and the research he's been doing and how he hopes this will actually make the Kickstarter project better than ever in terms of this film he's planning to make. And the reality is he may have the last laugh because he's an experienced filmmaker, he's an experienced journalist, and probably with or without this budget, he could have made this project a success. And now conversely, if it's not a success, if it's terrible filmmaking, we can already see here a lot of reasons for why it might turn out to be a very bad project indeed. He has managed to alienate and make enemies out of exactly the people he should have been interviewing and even celebrating in this same documentary. It's veteran activists like Steve Hindy, people who've used drones in the past, people who've been exposing factory farm conditions, veteran activists, for example, at Mercy for Animals. It's another vegan nonprofit foundation. Those are the people he should have been putting on camera, not just appealing to for help, but he should have been telling their life stories. He should have been talking to them about their families and, I don't know, their trips to the doctor or their time with the psychiatrist, whatever it may be. Those are the stories he should have been putting on camera. He should have been getting sympathy and support and cooperation from exactly all of the people he's now ended up really turning into a kind of embittered opposition against his project. This case study illustrates two big themes. Number one, we are not all on the same team. It's fractious and fragmentary. And at the best of times, that fragmentary nature means that we have meaningful criticism, mutual scrutiny, and exchange of views. But the second big theme here is total lack of personal integrity. And obviously, this whole story, in this case, the accusations and counter-accusations, and you guys can take the time and see the details of exactly what Will Potter has said in trying to blacken the character of Steve Hindy, and then Steve Hindy goes to the police and deals with the details in the police reports. It's nasty. It's pretty dark. It does not reflect well on Will Potter at all. It really is ultimately all about personal integrity. And for me, sadly, this is just one more fable showing how scarce personal integrity is out there and what a massive disincentive this is for people taking on ambitions that in any way rely on human cooperation. If I had taken the same energy I put into vegan activism over the last 4 years and put it into painting, I could have developed my skills as a painter. And I say that not with any reckless self-confidence as to my talent or the public having demand for my paintings, but primarily because painting is indeed something. It's a set of skills that I can refine in isolation without really depending on other human beings. As it happens, most of my passions in life really require high levels of trust and mutual cooperation. Politics is one, and another one is language. Sitting completely alone, your ability to make progress in a language like Cree or Ojibwe or Laotian or Cambodian is incredibly limited. Language, like politics, really needs a critical mass of even 5 people, but small groups of people. Language work is not the kind of work you want to be stuck doing alone. And as I say, it's really with great sadness that I now have to look back at what has happened in the last 4 years or 5 years, and I have to admit that I'm so let down by my colleagues and contemporaries that I would have been better off taking those efforts, taking that energy, taking that time, and funneling it into an area of study, an area of research, or even an area of creative self-expression in which I could be completely self-reliant. Because I'm very, very deeply disappointed with an entire generation of people who have a lot more in common with Klaus than they do with me. People who seem to have zero appreciation for the importance of, in 2 words, personal integrity.
À-bas-le-ciel.